Welcome back to another episode of Creepy Easter Eggs from Non-Horror Games. I am Gambeto Gaming, and today we have even more Easter eggs from our favorite non-horror games. You know, games you'd think you could play with the lights off, no problem. But turns out you might want to flip on some of those floodlights for some of these Easter eggs. These Easter eggs I'm covering today, like in previous videos, have extra impact since the player isn't typically on edge during these games, so finding these Easter eggs can not only shock the player, but burn themselves into our memories. Yeah, I remember Donkey Kong 64. That's the game where the guy shouts into your ear to get out, right? Get out. Yeah, that demon guy. Yeah, I played that game when I was a kid. There are a lot of examples of this throughout gaming history, so let's take a look at a few more today. So the creature in the capsule Easter egg we talked about last time is pretty light work compared to this Easter egg from Stardew Valley I found. In typical farming simulator fashion, you can get married and have children in Stardew Valley, but unlike in real life, if your life as a parent becomes too much on top of running and managing a farm, not to mention having to check in on Pam to make sure she doesn't have alcohol poisoning, that's a whole other thing, then you can actually do something to rid yourself of one of the game's biggest burdens. Yeah, we're still talking about kids, right? Yeah, if you don't want to look at your little rugrats anymore, you can send them away for everyone's mother, known as Mother Nature. You turn your kids into birds. Doves, to be specific, and this is through a process that involves black magic in the game. Since you can only have 2 children at a time in the game, this is a great way to cycle out your children until you get your favorite one. This isn't even the Easter egg we're talking about, as it's technically just a function in the game and not an Easter egg at all. We find that after succeeding in turning your children into a couple mourning doves, the game will pretend they never even existed in a pretty deafening way. Your spouse will no longer talk about your kids as if you woke up one day and they simply just disappeared. However, the player is not let off scot-free from this decision, as the game will send the player a few nods that they know what they've done and the total weight of it. One of these ways is a player will receive a phone call from a random number accompanied by static and someone saying, "You have forsaken us." This is really disturbing no matter which way you cut it, because it either means your kid's human spirit just dialed your digits, or a bird knows how to use a phone, and both are really freaking me out right now.
It's called you kiss your mother with that fucking mouth?
Not only this, but if you watch the TV on the 26th day of the fall season and choose the question mark option, a creepy image of a doll will pop up on the TV, followed by a text box that reads, "You've brought this upon yourself. Now I'm free. He. This really isn't clearly connecting to your bird kids until you do decide to visit the witch's lair again, which is where you do perform the act of transforming your kids in the first place. From here on out, after you've seen this on the TV, whenever you visit this place in order to carry out the bird transformation, you will fight the same doll you saw on the TV, except now they are glowing red and sporting a lot of health. They begin to levitate as soon as you enter the room, as if the spirits of your past children are controlling them themselves, backed up even more by the fact that once you defeat them, you can see what looks like to be a crow or a black bird of sorts fly out of the dolls before they perish. All of this is reason enough to never make me want to send my kids to the big bird cage in the sky in the game, but hey, who really needed a reason for that, right? While you could say all of this doesn't really qualify as an Easter egg, I think the effects after the decision to send your kids away, it definitely is one. The game could have simply pretended like what you were doing wasn't deserving of some consequences, or really just acted like it was a way to get rid of your kids. Nothing else really morally happening after that. But nah, they added some in and they're effective as hell. Good on you, Stardew. What other dark secrets are you hiding, I wonder? If you aren't familiar or haven't seen me cover the Splatoon series in the past, you may be surprised to find this series holds some of the creepiest secrets from modern Nintendo games. This mainly includes secrets that are hard to hear or see if you aren't directly looking for them, but when you find them, you won't easily forget them. I have covered the bad endings before from Splatoon 2 and 3, as well as the creepy laughter in the library level in the first Splatoon, but I may have found something even creepier from both Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 3. This Easter egg originally started out as a creepy lighting glitch that players found on the map Flounder Heights, which reveals what appears to be a really creepy bug-eyed face of sorts looking through a window in the building overlooking the level players play on. Many players believe this to be a creepy ghost face put here on purpose by game devs to scare curious players, but in reality this is actually a lighting glitch that does make it look a lot like a creepy face is peering at the player, but it wasn't done intentionally. Regardless of this being confirmed by people who took the game into texture programs to seek out individual files, revealing there isn't a specific file tied to this face and rather it's a glitch lighting effect, people still do believe this is a creepy ass face watching over the player of Flounder Heights. This became so infamous that it made its this way back to the developers of Splatoon, who by the time the map was brought back for Splatoon 3, they actually added in a real purposeful ghost face in the place of the lighting glitch on the first iteration of the map. This one is much less creepy, but it's still a bit unnerving to look at. Someone said it looks like Sans from Undertale, so now I can't unsee that. We can confirm that this is a real ghost face for this texture, as it exists as an actual texture in the game being named Ghost Window. So many believe that the developers use this opportunity bringing the map back to reference the creepy lighting glitch from Splatoon 1 by adding in an actual creepy face in its place. It's such a cool and creepy reference and shows just how passionate the developers of Splatoon are about their game and its world around it. Which one do you guys think is creepier, the lighting glitch from Splatoon 1 or the actual ghost skull face they added in Splatoon 3? I think just on pure visuals, Splatoon 1's version takes the cake. I mean, it looks like an illustration from the old scary stories to tell in the dark books. During the Shacklethorn auction heist in Payday 2, you come across a pretty different setting for a heist, at least for the Payday series. One of the characters, Duke, even comments during the mission that he's heisting an H.P. Lovecraft novel, and this couldn't be more true. There is a Lovecraft story created that reflects this mission in of itself, known as The Terrible Old Men, in which 3 men decide to steal from a lonely old man, and what becomes of them is pretty horrifying. Did I say old men? I meant old man. The Lovecraftian ties to this level don't stop here, as during other variations of the intro, Duke can be heard saying, "If the guests smell of fish, I suggest getting the hell out of here," which references The Shadow over Innsmouth, another Lovecraft novel in which a race of humanoid fish sacrifice and forcefully breed other humans. Pretty horrifying stuff there. I wouldn't want to be forcefully bred by a fish. So far, these have just been references to Lovecraft. We need something we can see with our own damn eyes for this to be worth talking about, right? I need some concrete evidence. Well, we got that right here at a Shacklethorn estate. Stay a while, but you may never leave. That's the line, right? From Hotel California? From Hotel Kansasfornia? Anyway, if you head to the back courtyard of the estate and look out upon the stormy horizon, you can see something pretty disturbing flash on the screen for a few seconds. In the dense clouds of the storm, there is a large creature being cast through whenever the lightning strikes, showing a larger-than-life creature towering over everything. I'll say it's pretty easy to miss, and even if you do catch it, it's not super defined, so you may not even think it's anything when you do see it. However, the creepiness of this Easter egg doesn't present itself until we consider the references to the previous Lovecraftian works, so we can only assume this is a reference to the infamous Cthulhu, who often appears in this form as a shadow in a storm, usually towering over anything looking up at it, roaring and moaning in a deafening way. This is definitely a creepy reference. It reminds me of a recreation of this Cthulhu in the clouds in video form I saw on YouTube forever ago. It's very obviously a fake video, but it doesn't stop it from accurately representing what this could look like if Cthulhu actually did exist, and it's fucking terrifying. So if this is a reference to Cthulhu, I think it adds more context that makes this Easter egg creepier, besides just being a giant on the horizon, which by itself is pretty creepy. There is even more context tying this level to the Call of Cthulhu story by Lovecraft, wherein an achievement is called Even Death May Die, which is a direct quote from that story. Regardless, if you actually find this figure in the clouds spooky, you have to commend the developers for the research and references to their source material for this level, and accurately portraying a creepy Lovecraftian level in an otherwise pretty normal game, at least when it comes to godlike beings like this. The Sims 1 is still one of the more impressive first-of-its-kind games. Most of the first-of-its-kinds are impressive for the time, but don't really hold up. Not the case for Sims 1, it's still a great fucking game. You could even argue base game versus base game, you know, not including expansions, that the first few Sim games have more content than later iterations, but you know, EA needs to make that extra 400 mil a year from a literal decade-old video game. I mean, hey, God bless, right? The first game introduced a lot of norms for the series, like the fact that the afterlife exists, including ghost and even death itself. However, something they didn't bring back until the fourth game was an Easter egg known as prank calls. These did show up in the Generations expansion in Sims 3, in which young adults could make prank calls, but in terms of your sim receiving these ominous calls, they were only present in the first and fourth games. In Sims 1, the prank calls are a lot more strange and threatening than in the fourth game, with your sim being able to hear stuff like this on their hotline. You have been chosen. They will come soon. The drop-off has been made. You've been warned. The end is near. Make preparations. They're coming soon. Maybe you should think twice about opening the door. Tink. Hey, think. I don't know why Conor McGregor read that last one, but thank you, sir. Your cocaine's on the way up. These are just a few examples of the more eerie pranks your sim can receive in the game, and since there isn't any explanation afterwards, the player is just left creeped out, awaiting something ominous from some of these prompts. To be fair, there are some humorous prompts sprinkled in here too, like, do you canoe? Which, like, what is that? It sounded like to start, it was gonna be like a, is your fridge running prank call, but they were genuinely curious if you like to canoe or not. Either that, or it was a start to a D's nuts joke, like, do you canoe? Can you fit these nuts in your mouth? The eerie messaging of some of the creepier calls have made some players paranoid throughout the years, and one even had something follow through after one of these prank phone calls. As the commenter Eric1550 stated, "What scared me most must be receiving calls saying the end is near, make preparations at the middle of the night, and 1 hour later the burglar came. Luckily I have my burglar alarm." All I'm saying is that if you're playing this late enough at night, you're sleep deprived, you're paranoid, and you're just under general distress, you're not taking a threat like do you canoe lightly. You catch my drift? The Krypt from Mortal Kombat has been a staple of the series ever since it was added as a new feature in Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. The Krypt is used to spend currency known as coins with a K to unlock things like locked characters and skins, and over the years the Krypt feature has become more and more impressive. Mortal Kombat 9 brought the Krypt back, but added in a feature that would be a mainstay for the Krypt from there on out. While exploring the Krypt from Mortal Kombat 9, there is a chance that you can get jump scared by one of the weakest jump scare images ever. I mean, just take a peek at the homie real quick. He's just a goblin fella looking like he's trying to play the ultra whitewashed version of Green Goblin from Spider-Man. Even though the jump scare is pretty low effort as it's just a 2D image of this gremlin dude, it still affected a lot of players during their time in the Krypt. Many players believe this dude was a way to scare players out of the Krypt if they 1 spent too much time in there, or 2 spent too many coins in one go, but in reality it was completely random for this guy to show up. Some people have reported never seeing this jump scare despite spending a lot of time in the Krypt, while others saw the jump scare within the first few minutes of entering the Krypt. What a way to start a bonus mode. Regardless, just the catching the player off guard nature of this jump scare, where it's located in a Krypt that is already pretty creepy, combined with how fast the jump scare happens, it's hella impactful. I think this comment sums up the Mortal Kombat 9 Krypt jump scare pretty nicely. The MK9 jump scare is one of the most low budget piece of shit jump scares ever, and I still manage to shudder at the thought of it when it crosses my mind. They brought this concept back in Mortal Kombat 10 in the Krypt sequence, which is much more refined, adding in actual models for the creatures jump scaring you. There is also a small quick time event involved where you have to attack the jump scare, so this one can be just as surprising. I do almost feel like this jump scare loses its effect immediately as it requires player input, so from the first time this happens to the player, after they'll be more on edge for it, versus Mortal Kombat 9 version where it could literally catch you lacking at any moment. You're peeing, you're spending, you're fighting. You're getting goblin, dude. I do commend them for adding in actual creatures that literally jump at you, like the giant spider and this wolf, and overall I think it was pretty effective, just not as impactful as the Mortal Kombat 9 version. Lastly, they brought back this jump scare idea in the Krypt within Mortal Kombat 11, but this one is much different. This is mainly because the Krypt now takes place in a third-person perspective, and this jump scare can only be seen if you equip Kenshi's blindfold, as he can only see the Krypt monster when he's wearing the blindfold. So it's more of a choice in this version, as once you go into the blindfold realm, you are then susceptible to running into this Krypt monster, and he isn't playing around in this version, as he can literally one-shot the player if he grabs you. I say this one is pretty effective too, as it adds a detriment to equipping Kenshi's blindfold, so much so that players say to swing your hammer immediately after equipping the blindfold, since these guys are so ready to hop on your meat when Kenshi gets that blindfold up. Overall, the Mortal Kombat jump scares are pretty effective, as a fighting game is the last place you'd expect a jump scare like this, and I think the environment like the Krypt is the perfect place to house these. I don't know, maybe after seeing this guy outside of the jump scare you realize how dumb he looks, but it doesn't take away from that initial impact of the first time he got your ass, and he got all our asses. Splashdown was a game released on PS2 and later on the Xbox, and definitely drew inspiration from games like Wave Racer and Sony's Jet Moto series. The game did pretty decently in the reviews, getting around 80s to 70s, and pretty fair to decent reviews. While the game was destined to just be another sports racing game that would be forgotten with time, there was one feature that made the game stand out to those who played it when they were younger. This was due to a pretty disturbing Easter egg that would occur if you strayed too far from the racetrack. This isn't just like a typical pseudo-invisible wall blocking players from straying too far off the track either, as you have to go pretty far off the main course to even see this thing. Meaning you're either driving out here to see this thing, or you were paid off beforehand to throw the race so bad that you decide anything else is better than racing. Once you reach the outermost bounds of the map, a giant tentacle belonging to an even bigger squid will grab the player and launch them across the map, ragdolling and all. And man, you get some serious air from this thing. If you have a pretty natural fear of large sea creatures, then this just speaks for itself as to why it's creepy, but I think the jump scare aspect of this thing also helps it out, as you'll be driving off course for a hot minute before this thing makes its presence known. This is definitely on the level of a Hot Shots Golf Flatwoods monster, as we've mentioned before, wherein the game is so far away from housing scary shit like this that just by sheer virtue of this being in the game makes it pretty terrifying to find. Oftentimes, developers love to sneak in creepy Easter eggs into places that players wouldn't usually discover if they were playing the game like they were supposed to. This often happens with audio cues that can take several minutes to start up, causing only players who step away from the game or leave it paused for whatever reason to overhear. This is sometimes done perfectly with something like the sounds that start playing from your controller if you are sat idle too long in Zombie Army 4. This trend was even present back in the day with games like Timesplitters 2, where if you leave the mission failed screen up for too long, you will begin to hear some disturbing audio cues. It sounds like a monster or something large growling, but in reality it is just a super slowed version of some dialogue from the character Captain Ash from the beginning of the level Aztec Ruins. Regardless of the reason, if it's just a slowed down version of dialogue in the game or not, it's still super creepy and out of place for anyone loitering too long on the game over screen. Many of the comments you'll see on videos featuring this Easter egg tell tales of how they set the controller down for whatever reason during the game over, and hearing this play out only to think they were going crazy or something. It's a very effective Easter egg for just being some reused sound assets slowed down, and something like this, while it could have been accidental, seems like the developers having some fun with their frustrated player base since it takes place so long into a game over screen. Either that or a way to place some silly outtakes into the game, as at the very end of the audio loop that plays on the game over screen, there is a woman heard asking, "Is that too loud?" which echoes with a strange eerie effect over it.
Is that too loud?
The randomness of this combined with the creepy slow dialogue in the beginning would cause any player to question what they just heard. The woman's voice was actually Malika Dalali, who was a prominent voice actor on Timesplitters 1 and 2, so it does seem like it was just an outtake that had extra effects added to it to make it more spooky, and it was definitely impactful for anyone who experienced this one back in the day. Outlaws was a Western FPS game that released in the late 90s and featured the iconic Doom-style shooting system, except this time in a very different environment. The game was really ahead of its time, featuring one of the earliest examples of a zoomed-in effect for a sniper scope. Yeah, we take advantage of that shit now, but back in the day, this was just the scope on the gun would zoom in, unlike modern sniping, which usually just switched to a fully zoomed-in perspective. Yeah, you had to get right up on the fucking screen with a magnifying glass to see this shit. Another thing that made Outlaw stand out back in the day was the iconic creepy Easter egg you could run into in the first level of the game. If you blow up the outhouse and enter through the bottom, you'll swim through murky green water until you stumble upon a secret room that holds some dark secrets. First of all, can I just say this is exactly how I build secret rooms in Minecraft. I was biting Outlaw style for years and I never even fucking knew it. Once inside the room, the ambience hits you like a train as it appears you've entered one of those spinning zero gravity fair rides, but in reality it appears you've entered a spaceship of sorts. Along the middle of the room, you'll find a small window in which you can open and see a few aliens cooking up a whole ass cow. Maybe this is what the Chick-fil-A cow saw for them to be so PTSD'd out of their mind to start that slogan to eat more chicken. After witnessing a pretty grisly fate for that cow, another third alien will come flying into the front of the window, jump scaring the player and shutting it forcefully in front of their face before the Easter egg ends. This seems to be on the same level as the John Romero's head Easter egg in Doom, but takes the idea and makes it a little bit more silly, whilst also adding in a pretty good jump scare on top of that. In terms of the rest of Outlaws, this definitely stands out as the strangest and creepiest part of the game. I'll just say this here, Outlaws walk so Red Dead could full sprint past the finish line, let's be honest with ourselves. Well, that'll top off today's episode of Creepy Easter Eggs from non-horror games, and gotta be honest, I'm running a little bit thin on entries as the non-horror games tag is getting harder and harder to work around. There's a lot of creepy Easter eggs, but usually they're from horror games. So perhaps in the next episode, I will broaden it to just Easter eggs in general, as I enjoy talking about these creepy secrets in games. But if you do have any Easter eggs that you found creepy in video games, let me know down below, and if I haven't already talked about it in the past, I'll include it into a future video. Thanks for all the support recently, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.